Scientists have been launching elements of different shapes into the vast abyss called space since the 1950s. From abandoned satellites to dead spacecraft and experimental animal species, the list of junk in space is endless. Most of them are still zipping through space to this day, but rather than correcting our mistakes, we have continued to pile on the junk. But could they all drop on us someday? Do they pose a threat to our activities in space? And just how many of them are out there in space? Join us in today's video as we reveal the shocking truth about space junk around the Earth. What exactly is a space junk? Space junk or space debris is any natural or man-made trash found in space. They come in different sizes, ranging from sizable dead satellites to rocket casings to tiny paint flecks from rockets. Junk is one of the most pertinent issues that threatens the smooth sailing of humans' activities in space. Ironically, it's a self-inflicted problem because the same scientists complaining about the enormous amount of junk in space are responsible for launching tons of man-made objects into orbit, all in the name of advancing our current technologies. Critically, space debris is just as much a problem for our gadgets in space as they are a threat to spacefaring astronauts. How much space junk is out there? Current estimates suggest about 2,000 active satellites are orbiting the Earth. At the same time, more than 3,000 dead satellites are wandering aimlessly in space. Furthermore, there are about 34,000 pieces of man-made or artificial space debris larger than 10 centimeters and several million smaller pieces rampaging across the emptiness of space at a rapid pace. In fact, due to this vast amount of debris, the International Space Station, ISS, has had to perform several forced maneuvers since 1999. Scientists believe that the ISS makes at least one forced maneuver every month. The European Space Agency performed 28 collision avoidance maneuvers across its fleet of satellites in 2018 alone. Also, American space exploration company SpaceX announced that it made 2,219 Starlink collision avoidance maneuvers in the first 6 months of 2021. These maneuvers have become critical considering the level of destruction that can occur if any of this space debris runs into a space rocket, satellite or ISS. One such event in 2009 shook the aerospace community to its bones. The incident saw a Russian military communications satellite called Cosmos 2251 run into the solar panels of Iridium-33, a commercial American communications satellite. The panel was smashed, causing the Iridium-33 to lose control. But what followed next was even worse. The impact added 2,000 more pieces of junk to the huge amount of space debris, some of them larger than 10 centimeters. For perspective, a centimetre-long piece of space junk is just about enough to derail a whole satellite due to the incredible speed at which both objects are likely to collide. And according to reports, objects in low Earth orbit travel at approximately 15,700 miles per hour. More often than not, humans are the biggest culprits when it comes to depositing junk in space. As of 2020, around 1,300 satellites have crossed the Kármán line into space. That's an average of approximately 3.6 satellites per day. Officially, the United States Space Surveillance Network currently tracks about 27,000 pieces of space junk, including natural orbital debris like meteoroids. This sounds like a huge number on paper, but in reality, it's only a fraction of the total amount of junk swimming through space. Some of them are too small to be tracked by NASA's ultra-sensitive sensors. But ironically, they're large enough to threaten rockets and robotic missions. As we continue to step up our space exploration efforts, the risk of potential collision in space increases. To avoid this, NASA has a long-standing set of guidelines that stipulates how potential collisions in space should be handled. These guidelines are part of a larger space regulation known as the Flight Rules. Sometimes, objects in the lower orbits within a few hundred kilometres can re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and burn up before they reach the ground. However, some debris or junk situated at higher altitudes of around 36,000 kilometres, which is the main habitat for communications and weather satellites, can orbit the Earth for a long time, up to hundreds or even thousands of years, waiting for the perfect chance to collide with another object. Despite the existing risk, some countries have turned a deaf ear to the warnings. In fact, rather than curtailing their excesses, these countries have deliberately increased the amount of debris in space by engaging in anti-satellite tests. China performed this test for the first time in 2007, destroying defunct weather satellites located at an altitude of 530 miles. About 3,000 new pieces of space debris were created on this occasion. The Asian giant performed the same experiment again in 2012, but this time the target was an object that was outside of its orbit. Fast forward to 2019, India joined the list of countries with an anti-satellite test technology after it sent a ballistic missile to outer space to destroy a satellite located about 300 kilometres above the Earth's surface in low Earth orbit, LEO. Russia was late to the party, but the consequences of the country's anti-satellite tests were nonetheless scary. The Eastern European nation destroyed the Cosmos 1408, a defunct Soviet satellite in space, creating new sets of orbital debris in outer space and threatening astronauts living on the ISS. At the time, the 7 astronauts and cosmonauts living on board the ISS had to take cover as the orbiting lad sailed through a cloud of space debris created by Russia. This drew criticism from different spacefaring companies, including the United States, Canada, South Korea, and others. Interestingly, space junk is not limited to the Earth's orbit alone. There are several objects lying around on other planets and satellites. For instance, our exploration of Mars means there are so many defunct man-made objects on the Martian surface. It's even worse on the Moon. So far, scientists have launched 54 uncrewed probes to the Moon. According to estimates, humans have left over 190,000 kilograms of material on the Moon. This includes golf balls, a golden olive branch, and different forms of art, among other things. Kesler Syndrome. Proposed by NASA scientist Donald J. Kesler in 1978, the Kesler Syndrome suggests that the growing amount of space junk could trigger a domino effect where more orbital objects collide to create new space debris. The more this process continues, the more debris that's deposited into outer space. And as time goes on, the Earth's orbit will become unsafe for satellites. Of course, that would affect our space exploration activities, and if things become too extreme, we might be unable to explore outer space as we should, at least until we're able to clear the debris. Computer simulations of outer space show this wouldn't be an easy task. For instance, space junk bigger than 80 centimetres will reportedly increase by 1.5 times in the next 20 years. Over the same period, space debris between 10 and 20 centimetres is expected to multiply by 3.2, whereas space junk smaller than 10 centimetres will reportedly grow by a factor of 13 to 20. This is only a rough estimate, and there may not be enough evidence or facts to bring it up at the moment. But if we continue to plunge anything and everything into outer space, there is no doubt that we'll get to this point someday in the not-too-distant future. How to clean space debris. In all, NASA says there are over 500,000 pieces of space debris cluttering Earth's orbit. If we don't bring that number under control, it can spell doom for humanity. But thankfully, there are several solutions to this problem. The electrodynamic tether, built by the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, can be used to slow down the speed of satellites, which would eventually cause them to fall into the Earth's atmosphere and burn up. Sometime in 2018, a British space junk cleaning device called the Remove Debris Satellite demonstrated how nets can be used to clean up debris in space. Earlier this year, the Chinese SJ-21 satellite was seen collecting defunct satellites in the Earth's orbit and putting them into a graveyard orbit where they are less likely to hit other satellites or spacecrafts. The current space debris cleaning technology is currently not advanced yet, but it's an area that scientists must develop and improve on if we wish to continue exploring the cosmos.